Do you love flowers? Are you inspired by nature? And do you enjoy working on your iPad? If so, you're in the right place. And if you're a little unsure or maybe feeling overwhelmed, it's okay. You're in the right place. I'm an elementary school teacher turned self-taught creative. I left the classroom in 2020 and found myself at home with a lot of time, a set of watercolor paints, and a Skillshare membership. I taught myself how to make seamless repeat patterns in Affinity Designer. Since then, my designs have been selected for journal covers, printed on poly mailers, and I have fabric sold through Spoonflower and other sites for small makers and businesses to use. I hope to encourage you on your creative journey. From day one, I knew I wanted to include flowers in my work. They looked so simple, however, I really struggled with them. I thought that the viewer really needed lots of realistic information to see the flower as a flower. However, it turns out the viewer actually needs much less information than I thought they did. Having come to this conclusion, I knew I needed to try the two together. A flat vector feel with simple line-drawn flowers. I created this class because I wanted to share a workflow I recently discovered using masks. I decided to narrow the field and only include birth month flowers. There's thousands of flowers to choose from, which is great, but also overwhelming at the same time. Plus, birth month flowers have special meanings, which I think make the bouquets really unique. I decided to also use reference images for this class to make sure the class was accessible to all levels, especially beginners. Affinity Designer is my go-to program. I work in it almost every single day, and I'm always learning new ways to work in the program. I've created over 100 patterns and countless motifs. I hope it becomes a program you enjoy working in as well. Now let's get started by looking at the class project. In this class, we'll create over 20 line-drawn flowers for our bouquets. A birth month bouquet is a special arrangement only using flowers that symbolize the month that each person from a group or family were born in. For example, if you have a group with a birthday in April, June, and August, those are the 3 flowers you would use. Each month, except for November, has 2 flowers to choose from. If you already know the months for your group or family, please feel free to skip around and go straight to those videos. We'll work in a non-destructive workflow, meaning that we're just going to temporarily erase or hide parts of our drawing so you always have your original to go back to. Plus, we're going to save each flower as an asset. So by the end of this class, you'll have a large library of flowers to choose from. I can't wait to see your bouquets. To get started, we'll take a quick tour around Designer 2 and look at some of the tools we'll be using. We'll also look at our working document and make sure we have our reference images set and ready to go. If you'd like to add some color behind your line work, we'll also look at ways that you can incorporate color. There's no pressure to add color though, as black and white is always in style. Your bouquets are going to be gorgeous. I just know it, and I can't wait to see them in the project gallery. Be sure to upload your project by heading to the Project and Resources tab, clicking Create Project, and uploading an image to the project description of your bouquet. Also, be sure to check out and download the resources. Resources are only visible on a desktop, so you won't see them on a mobile site like your phone. Head to a computer and then make sure to check out those resources. As a reminder, it takes 10 seconds of courage to share your work with this wonderful community. We would love to cheer you on. Now, go grab your iPad and I'll meet you in the next lesson. And a few tips before we get started. To open or import my document, I can go to Open, Import Document, and then I need to find the birth month flowers gallery.af template on my iPad. I can tap that to open. Since this is a template, you could also go to the templates, and then you should be able to find, possibly in your recents, the template for the birth month flowers as well. We'll use the artboards by turning on each layer. So we'll have a reference image and some colors that I've already selected from the reference images for you. If you want to use these colors, they're already here, ready to go. And if not, if you want to grab your own, feel free. By tapping on the layers menu, we have January toggled on, and then I'm going to open the layers panel. And you can see I've already done a few drawings in here. So I have a few layers that you might not have just yet. But this is our reference image for our carnations, which you can turn on or off. And these are our colors that I've selected already. And then we can close January and toggle on February. So we'll go month by month, turning each of these on, showing the reference image and some color. Let's take a quick tour of our designer to interface. As always, there's the question mark in the bottom right-hand corner, which provides a lot of helpful information about some of our tools, our studios, and then information for the middle and the top for our toolbar. We'll be using a lot of the pencil tool, so that is on our left-hand side. We're also going to be using our color studio quite often. So there's a black circle here, which will allow you to change the colors. You can switch between swatches. So if you've already imported maybe your bouquet 1 and your bouquet 2 swatches, this is where you can find those. If you tap on colors, you can use the color wheel. This is how I really prefer to pick colors. You can slide the wheel around the outside, and then there's also a dot in the middle. You grab that or tap. You can change the intensity of the color you've selected on the outside. To the right of the color dot is a paint bucket with a little paint overflowing, and this is the option to use fill. You tap use fill. Now you have an option for your fill color. This could be the same or different from your stroke color. Our first, let me change this to quite a different color. Our first color is for our stroke, which will be the line that we're working with. The second dot is for the fill. So this will be the inside, the painting, if you will, of the lines. You can also work over here on the right-hand side from our top color dot. You can select the same options, stroke, and then our fill. Let's look at the pencil tool with our stroke and our fill selected for just a moment. As you're drawing, you can see that we have a red stroke and a yellow fill. If I wanted to change the fill color, I can. So I can come and slide the outer wheel or tap in the middle. I can change my stroke color. I can also change the width of my stroke. Underneath the color studio is the stroke studio. And on the stroke studio, this slider for the width will allow you to change the width of your stroke. Alternatively, you could also use the slider on the left-hand side. So a lot of the tools are in two places, and you'll just have to kind of figure out which place really works best for you. As you change through different tools, you'll notice the toolbar at the top changes. So this toolbar is specific for the tool that you have selected. I did want to mention that you can use different brushes. So if you have your line selected here, you can choose a different brush to see what that might look like. I tend to use more of a monoweight feel in my work. However, I have used the solid pen with pressure and opacity. Another brush I like is the brush pen 01, 2, or 3. I tend to stay in the pen section. However, find something that works for you and your style. Next, let's look at the stock studio. The stock studio is on the right-hand side. It looks like two pictures on top of each other. The stock studio is where I've found all of our reference images. I've used either Pixabay, Pexels, or I did use Unsplash for a few stock reference images as well. Once you open your stock studio, you can type in the flower or whatever you're looking for. I'm going to tap Show Keyboard. Where you'll see lots of beautiful images come up that you can use. If you find one that you like, then you can go ahead and do a long finger hold on the screen. So it should wiggle a little bit, and then you can drag it over to where you would like the reference image to be. Once you've dragged it to where you like, you can resize it, making sure you have the Move tool selected. I like to look for images that have more than one angle. So this is a really great example because it actually has a side angle, has a top angle, has one again from a different side. This is also from a top side angle. So I look for the angles and then I also look to see if their flowers are maybe more open or closed. I did find there were some times when I wanted to double check that the reference image flower was actually the flower that I was searching for. To use Siri to help us double check our reference images, I'm going to select my image, tap on the three horizontal lines, tap export, and I want to only export the selection only. So under area, I'm going to select selection only, and it should be our reference image. I'm going to change the name and tap OK. You can save this wherever you would like. Next, find the image on your iPad. Mine is in my files under recents. You may need to look in your iCloud Drive or on my iPad, depending on where you decided to save your image. And tap my carnation to open. And then you'll see on the top right hand, there's a little eye with a circle and like a magical star. Let's tap on that eye and it should bring up some results. And now Siri is telling us that this is a carnation, also telling us that it's a type of flowering plant, and then we have similar web images. This is a great way to check to see that the reference image you're using is actually the flower you think it is. Now let's take a look at the Assets Studio. Assets is above the Stock Studio, has four little lines and then a square and a circle. Now tap on Assets and it'll open to the last assets library that you have open. Tap the top three horizontal lines and add category. The category will be the name of all of the flowers we are making. So I'm going to type in birth month flowers, tap OK. And it told me I have a birth month flowers library already. So that's okay. I'm going to type in birth month flowers skill share and tap OK. Now we have a category named birth month flowers Skillshare. Tap back on the three horizontal lines and let's add a subcategory. I'm going to divide my birth month flowers by month. Now I have a subcategory named assets. I want to change the name assets to January. Tap on the three horizontal lines and then rename subcategory. Hey, just a few quick tips. If you know exactly what months you want to use in your bouquet, then feel free to just go ahead and turn those on and skip around to the flowers that you need. If you'd like to build a gallery of all 12 months, then follow along with the class as we'll go in order throughout the year. By the way, if you're mostly interested in building bouquets, be sure to check out the lesson on bouquet building using masks. This is where the real magic happens. We have a little bit of work to do first, building out our gallery of flowers. We have a lot of flowers to get through. So hang in there because I promise it's going to be worth it in the end. When we start applying those layer masks and clipping masks, we'll see magic happening. I hope you're able to download and open the working file. If you're running into an issue, let me know in the discussion area. I'll do my best to get you up and running as quickly as possible. I'll meet you in the next lesson to get started on January's flowers. Open our January groups. We have our reference image first, and I want to go ahead and see that on my artboard. So I'm going to tap this light gray circle to toggle on the visibility. We are actually going to trace on top of this image. I'm going to lower the opacity by clicking or tapping on the three dots and sliding this opacity slider to about 50%. It doesn't have to be exact, just somewhere in the middle. Now let's create a new vector layer. And this is the layer that we want to do our drawing on, which is above our reference image. Select the pencil tool And let's make sure that we give our pencil tool a black stroke and we can start tracing. I'm going to use the carnation in the middle. I really like its shape and how it's open just a little bit more than the ones to the left and the right. Feel free to use any image that you want. I normally start by looking for some simple shapes. So this looks like a U shape here. And then I am going to start with some petals. So this petal here looks like it's actually folding out a little bit. So I'm going to try to capture that shape. We have another petal peeking out from behind here. And then we have a petal on the back side and even further back. I like to work symmetrically, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the left side now and capture that same feeling that the petals are coming out and they're a little further back than the others. With this flat style, we're not necessarily trying to get every single tiny detail. As you'll notice, I didn't actually go back and draw any of these shadowed areas. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and ignore them. I might come back in a few minutes and add in a few more details, but for now, less is more in the flat style. This petal here looks like it's folded out a little bit. I'm really not liking the way that I started my line there. So I'm going to go to the node tool, tap on the last node, and then I'm going to drop this down a little bit to make it a little smoother. Back to the pencil tool. Here's some of those shadowed areas again. So for the time being, I am just going to ignore those. I might, let's see, add in a little here to make it look like there's a separate petal, the one in the front and the one in behind. And I do want to add this line here to separate the petals. Okay, I like that. Let's go back over to the left. This will mimic the right where they're going to be out and swooping up a little bit. Start this guy here. Not liking how I started that either. So let's grab that node tool and go clean that up. Back to the pencil tool. All right, so these petals in the back, they're a little bit more forward facing, if you will. They're a little simpler to draw. So I do like to start in the front and work my way to the back. Let's turn off our reference image and see what our flower looks like. I'm liking the feel so far. The only thing is I have a little disconnect here. So this line is not in line with the others. Let's see what we can do about that. Where's this one coming from? Is it over here? There it is. Okay, happier with that. One little area up here I wanted to clean up as well. Let's turn our reference image back on and we'll go ahead and draw in our stem. So our stem, we just want to go ahead and get a good feel for the shape and the size of the stem at this point. When we get into building our bouquets in future lessons, we may or may not really need the stem. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. I just want to make sure that I have a general idea for what it does look like in case I decide that I want a shorter stem or a longer stem in my bouquet. Lots of zooming out, lots of zooming in, and turning on and off your reference image to make sure that it's evoking the feel that you want. I'm happy with this. I think it gives the reader enough information that it's a carnation, that it has lots of folds and petals. I do see one little area I'm going to fix on the stem here. All right, that looks even better. Now we're going to save as an asset. Head over to your layers panel again. Make sure you have your layer selected. Mine is layer 245. If you want, you can go ahead and group these together. It might make it a little bit easier for the future. And then we need to change the stroke to white. The stroke gets changed to white because when we go into our assets in just a few moments, our assets are shown on a black background. So it's hard to see the black stroke on the black background. We already have our birth month flowers category on our first subcategory, January. So we're going to tap on the three horizontal lines, tap Add Asset from Selection. Now you should be able to see your white carnation on the black background. Once you have your asset saved, head back over and let's change that stroke back to black. Now that our carnation is finished, I'm going to show you January's secondary flower, the snowdrop. The snowdrop is the white drooping flower you see here. But don't worry, if you have any questions about what I'm doing, I'm always available for questions in the discussion section. Enjoy, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Let's start on our February artboard. Go ahead and open your layers panel, expand your February group, and turn on your reference image. Select the reference image, tap on the three dots, and let's lower the opacity again. Tap on the plus sign and add a vector layer. Double check to make sure that we're on the vector layer above the reference image. Let's tap our pencil, get that activated, and add a black stroke. Zoom in and start on our petals. The violet has 5 overlapping petals, so instead of drawing each one separately, I'm going to draw the beginning of each one, starting at the center and working my way out. And then I'll come back and connect them in a few moments. So now that I have the basic shape of all of the petals, I'm going to add a few little connecting lines here to connect to the center of the flower. We also have some anthers here that we need to draw. So I'm going to try to get some of these anthers to show some movement. Just by adding some straight and almost curved lines there. And then at the end, I'm going to draw some longer ones with more of a rounded, almost a C shape or like a bean shape. Try to make these look a little different than the other ones, that you've already drawn. And if you need to draw maybe a little outside or above the image, the reference image, that's okay. Because remember, we just want to give the impression, the idea that there's something here. Actually connect these. They kind of looked funky, like they're just floating out there in space. So I'm going to give them a little connection. Actually, let me use my note tool. Connect this just a little bit more. There we go. We definitely have a lighter variation here. So starting at the base of the petal and working our way out, it gets darker. And then we also have a lot of lines on each petal. So for my flat style that I like, not as much detail, I'm just going to do maybe 2 or 3 on each petal. Feel free to do more if you want more detail. I'm just trying to keep the consistency between the flowers for each month similar as well. So I don't want one month to have a lot of detail and for another month not to have much. So that's what I'm also thinking about by only drawing 3, maybe 4 of these lines. Only thing that I'm wondering is if we could come in and add any sort of work on the ends of the petals. We don't have a lot of folds to work with, so that's not going to help us. So I think I am actually just going to go ahead and leave this as it is, though. Next, we want to add a stem. And since this is from the top looking down, I'm going to just imagine and envision that we have a stem that's coming down and then curves a little bit. So I'm actually going to make my curve up and down to the right. So I like to start in the middle where I think the stem would actually be starting at. Go ahead and draw until I come outside of the petal and then pick up with my pencil work there. So it's kind of drooping down is one way you could go about it with your stem. Another way you could do this is to have the stem come out and down to the left here. So I might try that to see what it looks like. There we go. Something like that. Or you might even want to have the stem coming down completely. So I'm going to give myself a little bit more room here. I'm going to head over to my layers panel and move this up just a little bit. So then the other option is that it would be coming from the backside almost straight down, but with a little curve because as we know, nothing's really perfect in nature. I'm liking the way this feels. So it would be something like the flower is standing, but then it's drooped over just a little bit in the top, but then you can see the front of the flower. I like that. So I think I'm going to go ahead and stay with that. I have everything grouped on the same layer. So I'm going to save as an asset now. I'm going to select my layer, change my stroke to white, come over to my assets, and I need to make a new subcategory for February. So tapping on the 3 lines beside assets, then tap add subcategory. Now it's labeled assets. I'm going to tap on the 3 lines to the right of assets and rename subcategory. I'm going to tap the 3 lines again and add asset from selection. Head back to my stroke, change this back to black, and now we have our violet saved. Here is the quick time lapse of the secondary flower for February, the primrose. Enjoy, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Let's start on our March artboard. We're going to find our reference image and open that. There are daffodils, so let's lower the opacity just a little bit to make it easier to trace and add a new vector layer. Make sure we have our pencil tool selected, add a black stroke, and let's get started. I'm looking for a daffodil that has a side view. from the side angle, this little guy here should do the trick. Even though he's covered up, this bottom petal's covered up a little bit, I'm just gonna go ahead and add it in as best I think, and we'll make it work. So again, I start just looking for some of those basic shapes with the petals. This one's gonna be a little bit shorter because it's behind. Here we go, around. Daffodils are the perfect sign of spring, this bright yellow color. And I think they're just a great way to say the sun is shining. All right, in the inside here, we're gonna need to make this a little jagged. Just wiggle your pencil kind of back and forth to get some of those. And we're actually gonna have a fold right here because this is gonna make kind of like a cup in the middle. So we wanna make sure we get that. And then we are gonna have some anthers. They're a little hard to see, but if you zoom out, you might be able to see them better on a different daffodil, and that'll help give you a little perspective. So they're either gonna be dots or they're just gonna be long lines, kind of like this. You can see where they have a longer line there. So I'm gonna make mine a mix of the two. So I'm just gonna make a couple of little long lines. And to make dots, I find it easier to turn off my stabilizer and just say no stabilizer for a few minutes, and then turn my stabilizer back on. Let's see how this looks. Zoom out, turn off my reference image. Okay, so this looks a little on the short side to me. So I'm gonna select my node tool. I do want to drag this out just a little bit, just to give it a little bit more of a petal shape. There we go. We'll go back in and add a stem. So since this flower is facing to the right, the stem would be from behind here to the left just a little bit. You can see this one kind of droops to the side, and this one as well in the background, it goes up and over. So I do want to make sure that that is portrayed. So it would be something like starting here at the base and coming down. So let's start there. That was like this. Let's see. So I am going to move this line in a little bit. If you wanted, you can see the daffodils have a lot of these long leaves that look kind of like swords or something. So if you wanted, we could go ahead and add in a few of those just to help us remember, especially when we start adding them to the bouquet. So just a long, skinny leaf, something like that. Might look nice. And then turn off our reference image layer again. And we have our daffodil. Going to select the daffodil. I want to group everything together to make it a little bit easier for the future. Change the stroke color to white. If you wanted, you could also change it just to a different color, like blue is one of those quick colors that always comes up. Then you add it to your assets. We're going to need a new subcategory. So add subcategory with assets as our new subcategory. So we're going to tap on the three lines, rename subcategory, March, then add asset from selection. So the blue shows up really well. If you want to do that, that would be an alternative to white. And I'm going to go ahead and change mine back to the black stroke. And we have our March primary flower, the daffodil. Now, with our daffodil finished, I'm going to show you March's secondary flower, the jonquil, and a quick time lapse. This one is really similar to daffodil as it's in the same family. Enjoy, and I'll see you in the next lesson.